This is Inspiring Careers with your host, Ingrid Centurion. We're going to talk about fascinating technologies that will impact your future. Meet inspiring entrepreneurs and people that are making huge differences in the community and around the world. We're going to share career and life lessons of inspiration and success. Our mission is to inspire our viewers to make a better life for themselves by sharing our stories, our interviews, and documentaries. Please stay tuned as we have incredible guests coming up.
Hi, Molly. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, Ingrid. Wonderful to speak with you.
Yes, thanks for sharing your story with VETRN, and tell us about your business first before we start talking about the VETRN program.
Okay, I am a public relations practitioner. I'm accredited APR, which is accredited in public relations. I'm a consultant working with clients on the unique area of digital media, social media, crisis management. Some people call it the cancel culture, but I'm very adept at helping leaders understand the media market right now. So I work in the area of response. So I'm a communication generalist, but right now, especially now more than ever, I'm specializing in crisis response and issue response.
And how did you hear about the VETRN program?
Well, true to the nature of my business, I heard about it on social media. I'm a Gen Xer, so I am rooted in traditional media like many people. I worked in radio and television and newspaper. That's where my background is. Received a graduate degree at Boston University in communications, but started working for FEMA at a time when after post Hurricane Katrina, so there's a reputation problem there. I was a military spouse and did a lot of traveling in my role, as a spouse. Ended up in New England, just by nature of being a military spouse, being in New England. I had to give up my role at FEMA when my husband retired from the military because he was working at FEMA. So here I was, a small business owner. I wasn't trained to be a small business owner. I was just trained in communication and my knowledge. And a big part, as I mentioned, of my business is understanding the power of social media. And that's where I first found out about the VETRN program. I saw it on a Chamber of Commerce site in Portsmouth. And even though it was calling for veterans, me as a military spouse, I feel families serve, spouses serve. I thought this is something that speaks to me. So I immediately sent an email in and I heard back from you, Ingrid, immediately. And I was so happy and we were off to the races then.
I know, and that's so great. Social media is just changing the world today. And how many places did you move around to? I want people to understand that being a spouse is you're also taking a sacrifice. Many spouses sometimes may not be able to further their career, right, with the jobs and things like that. And, you're moving, and you serve just as hard as the soldiers. And many times they're single moms, right, when the guys are deployed, or the reversal with the male, with the woman being at home, or the male being at home, like with my
yeah.
That. But I want you to share a little bit of that. You have such a good background, and so tell us a little bit of how you had a little bit sacrifice your career for your husband's career.
Ingrid, I'm so happy that that's one of the first questions that you started with, because as I mentioned, a military spouse and a military family, we serve as well. And for the average person, they don't understand the additional pressures that are on that family. And we happily serve because we understand the greater mission of it, certainly. But here's just a little, spotlight of it. When my husband was deployed to a ship underway, I was home with an infant, a new 2-year-old, and I was 36 weeks pregnant with twins. And I was living in a place where I didn't know many people. I didn't have family. I didn't have support. I was on my own. And you know what? You just do it. You grit through it and you do it because you understand the greater good of the greater service of the greater service of it. But that piece about the sacrifice, I don't look at it as, oh, I gave something up. I supported something for a greater good. The benefit that I receive from it is that I learned how to become resilient. I learned how to pivot. I learned how to take an opportunity. I had to walk away from a phenomenal job at FEMA. After Hurricane Katrina, they had a big reputation problem. When I worked there, I was the architect behind the social media program. I was the first person to bring digital media and the idea of using public opinion to shape, of using digital media to shape public opinion. And I was rewarded with that, with a job to run the social media. And I won't lie, there are many times I think about it. Oh, I wish I could have continued that job. What would have happened? But, duty called and we had to move to Maine. And, but with the move, I wasn't able to work. I wasn't able to have, a full-time job. I was able to deploy with FEMA as a temporary employee. As a complete sidetrack, I was deployed to a hurricane and I ended up getting run over by a truck when that happened to me. So that wasn't good. But from that experience, came this opportunity to work for myself. When my spouse retired from the military and moved to FEMA, that kind of eliminated my opportunity to work from FEMA as well. So there I was. And even though I knew I had a talent, I had no idea how to run a business. Every mistake a new business owner would make, I made. But I learned from it. I looked at it as an education.
Now, when you heard about VETRN, how many years have you already been working your business, and how many years were you in Maine by then?
I had been working my business for about 5 years at that point. And my first attempt at a business was with a friend of mine. And again, I think we made every single mistake, but I look at mistakes are not mistakes. It's just experience. But I was so grateful for this program and this opportunity. And that's why when I saw it, and even though the language didn't say, hey, military spouse, come on in, I could see through it. I knew that I was going to be welcome in this program. And I also knew that this was the program that I needed, because as an entrepreneur, my job is to be a specialist in my talent of what I do: communication, public relation, crisis management. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a tax attorney. I don't, necessarily understand a sales funnel. And small business owners have to do so much. And if you're a small business owner who came from the military ranks, or a spouse, it doesn't you're trained in leadership, you're trained in resiliency, but not necessarily how to run a business. So this opportunity came at the right time for my business, because it was taking off, but not in the most efficient manner. And that's what this program taught me.
And tell us a little bit about the mentoring program and how you were matched up with the mentor and how that contributed to your success.
The mentor program that I did not, Legal Kohlberg had told me that it was going to be a very essential part of the program. And I thought, okay, all right, that'll be interesting. I love meeting people. I always love hearing about other people's businesses. He matched me with someone that filled a need that I did not have. It was someone working in Portland, Maine, who came from the background of Lee, who understood how to turn around a business. So businesses that were in trouble, he would come in and fix up that business and tell them and put them on a path. We met, we spoke on the phone. We met at the introductory dinner when everyone came together, and he filled in the gaps of my business so perfectly that I changed how I was operating my business as soon as I spoke to him. I became leaner. I became more focused in cash. He had ideas that I had been like bouncing around in my head that I just didn't know. To tell someone who didn't work in communications or online entrepreneurship, like someone out of my sector, to give their point of view was incredibly valuable. So I'm forever grateful to him as well for his guidance.
And the turnaround management professionals, they've seen so many different businesses. So they're bringing so much advice, and they can come in and see exactly what you're doing wrong or what you can be doing better to grow your business. So I think that's huge. The Turnaround Management Association, we're partnered with them at VETRN, and that is invaluable to us all around the country as we grow.
Yes.
And now with the COVID happening, which devastated many small businesses, how were you able to turn that around and make it positive for you? Tell us the story.
Well, thankfully, I had already made adjustments in my business to make it leaner. So that was good. And I learned, cash is king. So I was starting to free up more cash immediately. And that is a directive straight from my weekly courses at VETRN. So that was good. However, my 2020, what pivot that I was going to make with, counsel of Lee, we were talking about money and where my income was coming in and time spent on certain jobs and the money that I was getting. And he's the one who noticed, like, you get paid a lot more to speak and to train, on the road. And also my mentor said the exact same thing. That is your opportunity, to do that there. Well, unfortunately for me, I had lined up so many things on the road as a speaker and also my workshops. And then when COVID happened, the week that COVID was coming, because I'm in public relations, crisis management, I knew something was on the horizon, definitely. I was speaking at an annual meeting in New Orleans. I was on Bourbon Street. I was in the air. So, almost like literally and figuratively, people were talking about it. I had one more stop before I flew home to Boston Logan, where I was speaking at an annual meeting. And when I landed in Logan mid-March, it was the last time I've ever been on an airplane, or even in downtown Boston for that matter. So I had to pivot like that. Within the week, I had lost, like I say, a college tuition's worth of business in the first week alone, which was painful because I have a daughter that's headed off to college this year. So I was watching, and thankfully now, because my books, they were cleaner, they were more organized, I could see precisely where I was losing business. But what that meant was I knew exactly what I needed to do to recover it. And so my pivot, to answer your question, is I took my offline trainings, what I was doing in person, and just transferred them online, and became one of the first people kind of in my world, in my space, to do an online training. And it was about, COVID-19 resiliency. What are your businesses doing right now in terms of, employees and local economy and communications? And I was able to recover, in April and May, 100% of my business just from that pivot.
So as a speaker, do you have books out, or you've got how many courses in your rucksack, I guess?
Great question. I have a book coming out. It's coming out in the fall. It was supposed to be finished in the final manuscript in April. And I told my publisher, I just have to do this on it for a second, because I have to capture what is happening right now with COVID-19. The book is called Indestructible Leadership, and it's the idea of building unshakable responses during a time of crisis, like during these moments of crisis. And how do you respond? Because so many of these crises that happen don't just happen in a vacuum. They don't happen on a newspaper. It spills out on social media, and it's everywhere. So it's a book about how to lead in times of crisis. I had to include COVID. And then right when it was ready to go again, the George Floyd incident, him being killed in Minneapolis, then happened, where it's also my whole hometown. I'm from St. Paul. And then I went on the book again, and I said, now I need to include this part. So the book, thank you for mentioning it. It will still come out in September. I'm finishing up the final manuscript right now. But a lot of my online trainings, I'm speaking at a lot of meetings, a lot of virtual meetings, annual meetings. And then I'm doing my training about now a lot of virtual trainings about social media messaging response, how to respond.
And that is so needed right now with all the things that are happening. People are getting, losing their jobs for saying something inappropriately. Everything is inappropriate today. So you have to really be careful and provide that advice.
I agree. Yeah. Yes. And then I'll tell you one more thing that was kind of born from this as well is I felt this need, even though I was struggling with all my accounts going, I was struggling with 4 kids at home who are now no longer at school. They were, learning from home. It was a juggle, but I felt the still need to serve and help people. So I took a lot of the material that I had to help with my clients, and I created an online response kit. I called it the COVID-19 response kit. And I opened it up. My target was communicators, anyone who communicated on behalf of a business or for a business. So it's also for leaders as well. It's totally free. I put information out there like how to respond, how to write a statement, how to do a video statement, what to put on social media, how to do a video statement, encouraging a script, people to use Facebook Live. If you are a CEO or a general manager of a small business, tell people how you're responding to this environment. Well, immediately it took off. I had so many people come into it. It built this community. I also happen to have a podcast, a weekly podcast. So I would talk about it then. I would share a lot of the tools. People that came from this community, it was amazing. We all came together to support each other, share information. I could pull people in the community, put them on the podcast. And it's just built this whole new plan for me. And so having all the knowledge that I gained and learned from the VETRN program, I'm now it's now morphing. The COVID-19 kit is morphing into the response kit. So I purchased responsekit.com, responsekit.org, and I am putting a lot of this information again, I'm coming off the COVID a little, but just how to respond, as you talked about it. And I'm putting it online. It's like an online coaching program with 3 different levels. It's going to be launched very soon, within the next 6 weeks, around the time too when the book is coming out. But I'm just thrilled. It's like it's this opportunity. I guess it's like being a military spouse. You take what you get. Some of it's great. Some of it's the lumps. But with resiliency and knowledge and communication and connections with other people, it turns into something. And so it's just been a very good amalgam of everything happening at once, and working out for me.
And tell us the name of your podcast so we can listen. And where can we find your podcast?
Oh, thank you for asking. It's the Confident Communications Podcast with Molly McPhearson. You can find it anywhere. You can find it on my website, but also Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, wherever you can find your podcast. It was wonderful having the community within VETRN as well. Because in my CEO group, I had great champions there who would always find a way to angle in, like, did anyone hear Molly's podcast about Gen Z? Did anyone hear Molly talk about that? And it's just that part of it was wonderful too. So I don't want to leave without mentioning just the guidance and leadership, of Lee and David, who both just managed this class so brilliantly. I loved it, but also the entire core of people within the group, the cadre, and finding out about everyone else's business and having people chime in, but my CEO group as well. It was so wonderful to meet people in different areas of business and really guide and support each other. And we're still in contact and work with each other today and help each other out. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful program.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that story. It's wonderful. I'm so glad to see you have continued success. And we will, when we get back to flying again, you'll be traveling all around the country.
Yes, I'm slated to start traveling again in October. I told them, I think I'm going to be okay to travel then.
I know.
Yeah, but I told Lee, I said, anything that you need with this program, because honestly, I am an ambassador for this program. And
Right.
when you agreed to say you're in, I was so happy. I knew it was going to be a game changer for me and my business. And I can say without a doubt, it has. No one cannot benefit from learning more about how to write a business or how to run a business. And especially for people who have served or sacrificed, you've earned it. You've earned it. So this was a wonderful, wonderful program. And I'm so grateful to be a part of it.
Well, thank you for being a part of it and continue to be an ambassador for us, because, we want to grow the program virtually and nationally. And the key is network.
Yes.
Us working with each other as business owners, there's a power in that. And being a veteran graduate, it's senior level education. And the key you said is that you wanted to learn. You wanted to learn more. If you have the mindset of always continuous learning, then you're going to get better. You're going to get faster. You're going to grow your business, and you're going to see that revenue go up. So.
Oh, without a doubt. And I don't want to leave. I cannot leave without saying one more thing too. To have the SBA program a part of it, right as our class was meeting during COVID-19, and the SBA, the PPP loans, economic impact loan, that all of this kind of came raining down on all these business owners. And we had the resources at our fingertips virtually with with the Zoom calls and meetings with the SBA that were set up through VETRN. Absolutely indispensable. I was getting information that none of my colleagues had access to, simply because I was a part of this program. So even though it was a bummer that we didn't get to graduate with everyone else, and see everyone, and we missed our graduation at the original date, the benefit of having that time with the SBA was incredibly invaluable.
That is so true. Well, Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and continued success.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was wonderful speaking with you.
I'm Ingrid Centurion, and this is Centurion's Arena. Just like the ancient Romans who battled in the sandpit using swords, spears, and all types of weapons to entertain the people, in my arena, we're gonna battle it out with facts, perspectives, and real-world stories. Let the people decide. Get ready for an amazing and entertaining show. Today we have two amazing people who are gonna share their perspectives on why America is so important. And so many Americans may take the freedoms we enjoy for granted. We have Sophie Underwood and Anton Teodescoro.
I was either lucky or unlucky enough to grow up in Romania, in a communist country under Ceausescu, who was for many people who today may not have heard of him, he was kind of next to Stalin and Mao Zedong, kind of their third one in the triad. And I was lucky enough to get to this country because I had a brother who actually did the hard work for me. And he ended up crawling across the border from Yugoslavia into Italy, literally across barbed wire and guns and people, and all the system set up to keep you inside the country, not to let you, to keep you outside.